My stomach felt like it held a rabbit, leaping frantically. The smell of alcohol, mixed with the cheap air freshener smell in the KTV private room, made my head spin. The client's fat, greasy hand landed on my shoulder again, with a force that couldn't be refused. "Ah, little Lin, young and promising. Come, this drink, your boss Wong toasts you. Drink it, and I'll definitely give your company's new project priority consideration." I looked at the golden yellow liquid in the glass and felt a wave of nausea. I'd lost count of how many glasses I'd already had tonight. If I drank any more, I feared I'd really collapse right here. But I wasn't in turn, just made permanent. Could I refuse? No. All I could do was force a smile uglier than tears, pick up the glass, and resignedly pour it down my throat. When would this damned mandatory socializing ever end? I was the one who revised the design drafts 800 times and got chewed out mercilessly. Now I was the one dragged here to take the drinks and get groped by the client. Meanwhile, my direct supervisor, Shun Jibai, the woman known as the Abyss Miju of the design department, had probably clocked off long ago, gone home, put on a face mask, and was enjoying her high-quality single life, right? Thinking of her perpetually expressionless, icy face and her gaze during meetings, so sharp it felt like it could pierce right through me. I couldn't help but shiver. Falling into her hands was more terrifying than being forced to drink by the client. I don't know how many more glasses I was forced to drink. I felt like I was walking on cotton, dizzy, as someone helped me out of the KTV. "Little Lin, not bad, not bad. Got potential," the client slurred, clapping me on the back. "Come on, Boss Wong will take you somewhere good to relax." Before I could even process what this good place was, I was half pushed, half coerced into a car. By the time I sobered up a little, I found myself lying in a dimly lit room filled with the aroma of essential oils. A soft sofa, gentle music. It seemed to be a VIP room at a foot massage parlor. "Boss Wong." I tried to get up, but my body felt as limp as mud. "Lie still, don't move," came Boss Wong's voice from the side. He sounded quite drunk too. "Just enjoy. The technicians here are first-rate, guaranteed to leave you satisfied." With that, he staggered out, pulling the door shut behind him. I was left alone in the room. It was quiet enough to hear my own heartbeat. The alcohol surged, and my head spun even more. My neck was indeed painfully sore from long hours spent drawing. Relax. Might as well relax a bit, since I was already here. I resignedly closed my eyes and slumped onto the sofa like a salted fish on a chopping block. I don't know how much time passed before I sensed someone enter. Their footsteps were very light. Then, a pair of cool hands rested gently on my shoulders. The pressure felt familiar. It wasn't some flashy, superficial kneading, but precise pressure, finding the sorest points with just the right amount of force. Very comfortable, but also very strange. This pressure, this technique, why did it feel so much like? A dreadful thought struck my muddled brain like a lightning bolt. I snapped my eyes open. Against the dim light, I saw a face. A face, one I saw every day in the office, yet which now struck me like lightning, terrifying me down to my soul. Cool eyes and brows, tightly pressed lips, a taut jawline, her gaze devoid of any emotion, only a kind of condescending scrutiny. She wore a dark uniform, clearly that of a massage therapist, with the sleeves rolled up to her elbows, revealing a section of pale wrist. But that face, that aura, it was unmistakably the director, Shun. I was so startled, I nearly leaped off the sofa. My voice cracked, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Was I dreaming, or was the alcohol causing hallucinations? My direct supervisor, Shin Jibai, that high and mighty, untouchable woman, feared by every man in the company, actually wearing a technician's uniform, here and massaging my shoulders. What the hell kind of horror plot was this? Shin Jibai looked at my terrified expression, her own face showing no sign of surprise. She even gave a faint smile. That smile, more than her usual lack of expression, sent a chill down my spine. "Awake. If you're awake, lie still." Her hands remained on my shoulders, the pressure light, yet carrying an undeniable weight, an implicit command. "Boss Shun, you, how are you here?" My tongue nearly tied itself in knots, and I was trembling like a leaf. She raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something I couldn't decipher, almost like amusement, flashing in her beautiful eyes. What, do you own this place? Am I not allowed to come? No, that's not. I was almost in tears. What I meant was, what you mean isn't important. She cut me off, leaning down close to my face. The faint, cool scent of the expensive perfume she always wore, mixed with the aroma of essential oils, drifted into my nostrils. What's important? Her fingertips lightly brushed the side of my neck, sending fine tremors through me, is that today. You listen to me. Her voice was soft, gentle, yet like an invisible command. It instantly crushed any will I had to resist. I froze on the sofa, not daring to move a muscle. Looking at her face, so close, flawlessly beautiful, yet as cold as a blade. Only one thought screamed frantically in my mind. Help. I swear, that was the longest and strangest hour of my life. Like a rabbit caught in a hawk's gaze, I lay stiffly on the sofa, every muscle tensed, barely daring to breathe. And the hawk, my boss, Shunjabai, was unhurriedly using her slender, yet surprisingly strong hands to press and knead my aching shoulders, neck, back, and even my legs and feet. Her technique was highly professional, even better than any of the experienced therapists at massage parlors I'd been to before. She found every pressure point with unerring accuracy, the pressure perfectly controlled, sometimes aching, sometimes pleasurably numb. It was admittedly very relaxing. If it hadn't been Shun Jibai massaging me, I probably would have drifted off to sleep from the sheer comfort. But now, I just felt every nerve stretched taut, the hairs on my skin standing on end. What on earth was she playing at? Was she really moonlighting to experience life? Impossible. The Maserati she drove could buy 10 places like this. Was she deliberately messing with me? Because I hadn't done my work properly? Or, for some other reason? My mind was a complete mess, wild speculations flashing through it like crazy, but I couldn't make sense of anything. I didn't even dare look up, only catching glimpses from the corner of my eye. Her precise silhouette in the uniform, those hands moving over my body with practiced ease. Relax. Her cool voice came from above me. I jumped, startled. Your muscles are so tense. A lot of pressure at work? She asked, her tone unreadable. It's all right, I stammered. Inside, though, I was screaming. Don't you know exactly how much pressure there is? Who in the design department isn't terrified of you? She seemed to chuckle softly. It was a faint sound like ice cracking, and it only made me more nervous. So, what do you think of my technique? She asked again. It's very good, Boss Shun. Thank you for your hard work. I racked my brains for the right words. Oh, the pressure from her hand increased slightly, pressing on an extremely sore point on my shoulder and neck. Just pretty good. I sucked in a sharp breath. No, exceptionally good. Boss Shun is considerate of her subordinates. Her technique is first class. I'm deeply moved. My survival instinct made me blurt things out. She seemed satisfied. The pressure from her hand eased back to its previous soothing rhythm. You certainly have a way with words, she said lightly. The air fell silent again. Only the soothing background music remained, and the faint sounds of her fingertips pressing against my skin. The feeling was very subtle. On one hand, there was extreme nervousness and fear. On the other, under her touch, my body was uncontrollably relaxing. The soreness gradually faded, replaced by a kind of indescribable comfort and, even a bit, pleasant. My nerves must have been numbed by alcohol to conjure such an absurd sensation. This was Shunjibai, the she-devil who could kill me with a look. Just as my mind wandered through wild thoughts, her hand moved to my calf. Through the thin fabric of my trousers, I could clearly feel the warmth and pressure of her fingertips. Then, she suddenly stopped. Her fingers lightly traced a circle on a specific spot on my calf. Here, is this a scar? She asked. My heart leaped. That was from falling out of a tree when I was little. It left a scar, neither too deep nor too faint. Since I usually wore long pants, almost no one knew about it. How did she? Yes, accidentally when I was little. I answered vaguely. She murmured and said no more. But her fingertips, resting on the scar, felt like they carried an electric current, making me feel uneasy all over. Time ticked by, second by second. I felt like I was undergoing slow torture. My body was relaxing, but my mind was on the verge of collapse. Finally, she stopped. Done. She stood up, her voice returning to its usual cool tone. Get up. As if granted pardon, I almost instantly sprang up from the sofa, fumbling to straighten my clothes. She stood to the side, arms crossed, watching me with calm amusement, a hint of playfulness in her eyes. How was it, she asked. Very good. Thank you, Boss Shun. I kept my head down, not daring to look at her. She nodded. Well then, pay the bill. Ah, I froze. What? She raised an eyebrow. Enjoyed the service, and now you want to skip out on the bill? No. That's not what I meant. I quickly pulled out my phone. How much? I'll scan the code. No need to scan me. She pointed towards the door. Go settle the bill at the front desk. Give them my employee number 888. Okay, I replied, heading for the door as if fleeing for my life. Reaching the door, I couldn't resist looking back one more time. She was still standing there, the dim light outlining her elegant figure. Her face showed no expression, but her eyes were like deep pools, unreadable. Boss Shun, I gather my courage, finally asking the question burning inside me. Why did you? She looked at me and suddenly smiled. That smile under the light held a kind of indescribable allure. Perhaps. I felt you were too tired recently. Needed to relax a bit. Her voice was soft, tinged with playfulness. Or maybe I just felt that this. She paused, her gaze sweeping over me, finally settling on my face. Is quite amusing. I practically fled the VIP room in panic. Finding the front desk, I gave that damn employee number 888 and paid by scanning the code with trembling fingers. The price was outrageous, enough to keep me eating instant noodles for half a month. Then, without a backward glance, I fled that Yuzu Xian place which made my skin crawl. On the night street, a cool breeze blew. I stood by the roadside, gulping down deep breaths of fresh air, trying to calm my heart that felt like it was about to pound out of my chest. But in my mind, everything that had just happened kept replaying relentlessly. Shen Jibai, wearing a technician's uniform, massaging me. Those hands, which had worked on countless design drafts and signed multi-million yuan contracts just now, were actually massaging my feet. In her final glance, those words, quite interesting. Interesting? What on earth did she mean? I grabbed my hair forcefully, feeling like I was going crazy. This makes absolutely no sense. She's the high and mighty design director. I'm just a lowly intern at the very bottom, rung under her. Between us lies a vast chasm of class and power. Why would she condescend to come to a place like this, using this method, to mess with me? Simply because it was interesting? Like hell anyone would believe that. Could it be I did something to offend her before, leading her to retaliate against me like this? But thinking back carefully, I usually wish I could make a detour just to avoid her, not even daring to say a single extra word. How could I possibly have offended her? Or maybe this was all just a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by drinking too much? I pinched my thigh hard. Ouch, pain. It wasn't a hallucination. Then, the only explanation is, Shunji Bai. Does she have some kind of weird fetish? Like enjoying role-playing to experience different kinds of life? Or enjoying the thrill that comes from controlling and messing with her subordinates? The more I thought about it, the more my skin crawled. No, I can't think about this anymore. I'll just treat it as an absurd nightmare. Tomorrow, back at the company, she'll surely be the same aloof director Shun, and I'll still be the insignificant little Linyi. Everything that happened tonight, I'll keep it buried deep inside. Absolutely no one can find out. Otherwise, my days at the company would likely be numbered. Having made up my mind, I hailed a taxi and went home. I took a shower, changed my clothes, and lay down in bed, but I just tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. As soon as I closed my eyes, I saw Shan Jibai's icy face and felt the eerie touch of her fingertips brushing against my skin. And that final, half-smiling look in her eyes. It was like a persistent ghost, impossible to shake off. The next day, sporting huge dark circles under my eyes and feeling extremely apprehensive, I walked through the company doors. The entire way, I prayed silently. Please, don't let me run into Shunji Bai. Please, don't let me run into Shunji Bai. Unfortunately, my worst fear materialized. Just as I reached the entrance to the design department, I saw Shunji Bai emerging from her private office. Today, she wore a perfectly tailored white skirt suit, her hair pulled back neatly, her face expressionless as ever, radiating a powerful, unapproachable aura. She looked like a completely different person from the woman in the technician's uniform last night. My heart instantly leaped into my throat. Instinctively, I wanted to lower my head and avoid her. However, as if she had already spotted me, she walked straight towards me. Linyi. She stopped in front of me, her voice cool. Gee, good morning, Director Shun. I was so nervous, I nearly bit my tongue, lowering my head even further, wishing I could disappear into a crack in the floor. She acknowledged, her gaze lingering on my face for a few seconds. That gaze was so sharp, it felt as if it could pierce right through my scalp to the panic and unease churning inside me. I felt cold sweat beginning to prickle my skin. Was she about to mention last night? However, she merely said lightly, "You worked hard the social engagement last night." Oh, not at all. It was nothing. She nodded, her tone perfectly normal. Feeling a bit off today? Didn't sleep well last night. And no, I'm fine. I straightened up defensively. Is that so? Did the corner of her mouth just curve up slightly? It was so fast I might have imagined it. Good. Put the preliminary proposal from Mr. Wang's project from yesterday on my desk before 10 o'clock. Yes, Director Shun. I responded hastily. She said nothing more, turned, and walked away, the clack-clack-clack of her high heels receding. Watching her retreating back, I let out a long sigh of relief, realizing my back was soaked with sweat. She didn't mention anything. Was last night really just an accident? Or did she simply not give it a second thought? True, someone in her lofty position. Why would she bother herself with messing with a mere intern? I must be overthinking things. I tried reassuring myself, but that unease settled deep inside me like a quietly planted seed. I couldn't shake the feeling. Things weren't that simple. That woman, Shunji Bai, her mind was too deep. So deep it frightened me. The next few days passed peacefully. At the company, Shunji Bai was still the same cold, stern, iron-willed devil woman. In meetings, she would ruthlessly point out the flaws in my proposals. When assigning tasks, she never showed me any leniency just because I was new. Her gaze toward me was no different from how she looked at any other colleague, calm, sharp, appraising. It was as if everything that happened that night at Imperial Foot Pavilion had just been an illusion, a dream. I, too, tried hard to forget that night's absurd episode and threw myself completely into work. After all, having just passed probation, I had to put in tremendous effort to gain a firm foothold in this competitive environment. I carefully maintained my distance from Shunji Bai, keeping my work reports concise and avoiding any unnecessary contact with her as much as possible. I thought that if I just pretended nothing had happened, the incident would be completely forgotten. Yet I was too naive. Shunji Bai, she was like a skilled hunter, and I, her pre-selected target. She hadn't forgotten that night. She had simply adopted a more covert, more suffocating way to continue the game she was orchestrating. She began to subtly remind me through small details, without betraying any emotion. For instance, during a department meeting discussing the design style for a new project, I proposed a direction leaning towards warmth and comfort. Shunji Bai listened, then commented impassively, "Linyi, your idea is good." But she paused, looking at me with an ambiguous smile. Sometimes being too comfortable can make people lower their guard. Her gaze was pointed, heavy with implication. My heart lurched, and I instantly remembered that bizarre comfort from when she'd pressed down on me on the sofa that night. Cold sweat beaded on my skin immediately. For instance, the company break room got a new batch of imported essential oils, supposedly for employee relaxation. Shunji Bai happened to be there right when I went to get water. She picked up a bottle labeled lavender, sniffed it, then looked at me and said lightly, "You should like this scent. It's calming." Of course I remembered. That was the exact scent that had filled the room that night. I forced an awkward smile and beat a hasty retreat. Or she would suddenly send me WeChat messages after hours about things completely unrelated to work. Shunjibai, that strawberry millefeuille from the restaurant last time, how was it? I stared at the message, which came out of nowhere. It took me a long moment to remember. It was a photo I'd casually posted on my Moments feed after dinner with friends last time. It had long since been buried by other posts. How did she even see it? And she even remembered it? Linyi, it was okay. Shunjibai, try the one on XX Road next time. They use real cream. The texture is better. Linyi, thank you for the recommendation, CEO Shin. And then nothing. She was like a ghost, popping up out of the blue when I least expected it, prodding at my nerves with this seemingly caring but actually ambiguous approach, only to disappear again just as quickly, leaving me alone, heart pounding, mind racing with wild thoughts. What on earth did she want? She was driving me crazy. This feeling was worse than being directly scolded by her. It was like an invisible hand choking me, leaving me breathless, unable to break free. She seemed to enjoy this feeling of controlling me, watching me get nervous, panicked, and flustered by her every word or glance. Did a trace of pleasure flicker in the depths of her icy eyes? I started losing sleep, lost my appetite, and kept making mistakes at work. The more I tried to avoid her, the more mistakes I seemed to make in front of her. The more mistakes I made, the more terrified I became of facing her. It became a vicious cycle. Several times, I wanted to muster the courage to ask her directly, CO Shun, what exactly do you want? Can't you just leave me alone? But the words always died on my lips. I didn't dare. She was my boss. She held my future in her hands. I was just a powerless little intern. How could I possibly fight her? Just when I felt I was about to be crushed by this mental torment, a turning point, or rather, a deeper crisis, appeared. The company took on a major project, and the collaborating party was known in the industry as notoriously difficult. Shunjibai was leading the team personally, and I, surprisingly, was assigned to the project group. I knew this had to be her arrangement. Sure enough, at the very first project team meeting, she put me in my place immediately. She tore apart the section of the proposal I was responsible for, criticizing it from top to bottom with sharp, merciless words. I stood there, in front of all my colleagues, turning pale and my palms sweating as she berated me. After the meeting, a colleague I usually got along with pulled me aside secretly and whispered, Linyi, did you somehow offend CEO Shin? She was really harsh on you today. I gave a bitter smile. Offend her? It was far worse than that. I felt like a lamb walking into a tiger's den. However, it wasn't over yet. That evening, the collaborating party treated the project team to dinner. During the meal, the client's boss, notorious for being lecherous, kept glancing my way, intentionally yet seemingly casually. After a few rounds of drinks, emboldened by the alcohol, he started getting handsy with me, his words growing increasingly frivolous. Ah, little Lin, young and promising, and also quite my type. Ha ha ha. He said this while trying to put his hand on my shoulder. Terrified, I quickly dodged away, my face pale. The other colleagues looked awkward, but no one dared to speak up. Just as I was at a loss for what to do, Shun Jibai, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly spoke. Her voice was colder than the air conditioning. Boss Wong, she said, raising her glass and looking at him, her gaze sharp as a knife. You dare touch my person? Shun Jibai's words struck like a thunderclap, instantly shattering the ambiguous and oppressive atmosphere in the private room. Everyone froze, including the leering Boss Wong. CEO, Shun. The smile froze on Boss Wong's face, his hand still hovering in midair, somewhat flustered. I was just joking with little Lin. A joke. Shun Jibai set down her glass with a distinct clink. She stood up and walked over to Boss Wong. The imposing pressure from her height made Boss Wong instinctively shrink back. Does Boss Wong find it amusing to make this kind of joke about my subordinate? Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried an undeniable authority and a chill. I didn't mean it like that. Sweat began to bead on Boss Wong's forehead. He probably hadn't expected Shun Jibai to turn hostile on the spot for an insignificant little intern like me. Then what did you mean? Shun Jibai pressed forward relentlessly. Or perhaps Boss Wong feels that for this project, our Gu Corporation. absolutely needs you. This statement carried significant weight. Boss Wong's face changed completely. He quickly waved his hands. No, no, no. Boss Shun, you've misunderstood. I drank too much. I was talking nonsense. I'll punish myself with 3 shots and apologize to little Lin. To Mr. Lin. Saying this, he actually downed 3 consecutive shots of Baijiu, then turned to me, forcing a smile that looked worse than crying. Mr. Lim, my apologies. That was my fault just now. Please don't take it to heart. What could I say? I could only shake my head with a dry laugh. It's okay. Shun Jibai gave him a cold glance, said nothing more, and turned to the rest of the project team. It's getting late. Let's call it a day. With that, she was the first to walk out of the private room, leaving behind Boss Wong and a group of stunned colleagues. On the way back, sitting in the car, my mind was a tangled mess. Shun Jibai just now. Was she helping me out? Why? Hasn't she always disliked me? Didn't she enjoy teasing me? Why would she offend an important client for my sake? And what did she mean by my subordinate? Could it be she actually, towards me? No, no, no. Impossible. I'm overthinking it. How could a woman as high and mighty as her possibly be interested in a small fry like me? She must have other motives. Perhaps. She just didn't want her toy to be touched by someone else? Yes, that must be it. At this thought, the faint, inappropriate flicker of gratitude that had just risen in my heart instantly vanished without a trace. Replacing it was a deeper fear and humiliation. In her eyes, I probably didn't even count as a person, just a chess piece that could be manipulated at will, and that others weren't allowed to touch. From that day on, Shun Jibai's control over me seemed to become even more blatant. She would frequently summon me to her office under the pretext of project needs. Nominally, it was to discuss work, but in reality, it felt more like scrutiny and training. She would point out every tiny mistake in my proposals, then, in her unique, oppressive manner, guide me on how to revise them. Sometimes she would stand behind me, leaning down to look at my computer screen, her warm breath brushing past my ear, sending shivers down my spine. Sometimes she would lightly tap the back of my hand with her pen, her tone indifferent as she said, "Here, the lines are too soft. Lin Yi design like life needs to have edges." Every time she came near, every glance, every word was like a stone dropped into my heart, sending out ripples, making me agitated and unable to concentrate. What drove me closer to breaking down was that she seemed to enjoy seeing me like this, controlled by her, flustered and panicked. Once, after making a mistake, she called me into her office and gave me a harsh dressing down. I kept my head bowed, not daring to breathe loudly. After the scolding, she didn't immediately let me leave. Instead, she picked up the coffee cup on her desk, took a slow sip, and then suddenly asked a completely unrelated question. "Lin Yi, are you afraid of me?" I froze, unsure how to answer. Say yes. That seemed too cowardly. Say no. Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? Seeing I wasn't speaking, she put down her coffee cup, walked over to me, tilted my chin up slightly, forcing me to meet her gaze. Her eyes, like 2 bottomless lakes, reflected my panicked image. "Good. You should be afraid." She looked at me, the corner of her mouth lifting into a very faint curve, yet enough to make my heart skip a beat. Because her voice lowered, carrying a hint of bewitching magic. "I like seeing you afraid." In that moment, I felt completely seen through by her. All my pretenses, all my struggles, seemed so ridiculous, so futile before her. I was like prey caught in her web. No matter how I thrashed, I couldn't escape her control. This feeling suffocated me, drove me to despair. And yet, there was also a faint trace of something I didn't even dare admit to myself. A stirring? I must be crazy. I felt like I was about to split in 2. During the day at the company, I was Lin Yi, the little intern, respectful and trembling before Shinji Bai. But back home at night, I would repeatedly recall the things she said in the office, remember the cool scent of her perfume when she leaned close, remember the strange sensation of her fingertips brushing against my skin. I knew this wasn't right. I knew I should stay away from her. But I couldn't. She was like a giant magnetic field, drawing me in irresistibly, making me unable to help myself. Her special treatment, of me gradually caught the attention of my colleagues. Some envied me for receiving the director's personal guidance. Some were jealous that I could participate in core projects. And some whispered behind my back, saying I must have used some special connections to make the dragon lady treat me differently. There were even nastier speculations. These rumors were like invisible pressure, crushing me, making it hard to breathe. I tried to keep my distance from Shun Jibai. I tried to minimize one-on-one contact with her, keeping my work reports as concise as possible. But it was useless. She always found a way to make me have to appear before her. Either there was an urgent problem, with a project requiring me to go to her office immediately, or some detail needed face-to-face discussion, and a phone call summoned me. Once, she even drove her car right to the company entrance after work, rolled down the window, and said to me, "Get in, I'll give you a ride." Looking at her, eye-catching Maserati, and her unquestionable gaze, I eventually gave in. Sitting in the passenger seat, my whole body was stiff, my palms sweating. The car filled with the cool fragrance she wore, the atmosphere stiflingly oppressive. But she acted as if nothing was wrong, driving while casually asking, "Been feeling a lot of work pressure lately?" "It's all right." "Is that so?" She glanced at me. "I see your dark circles are nearly down to your chin." I was speechless. "Isn't this all thanks to you? Are you perhaps still thinking about that night?" She asked suddenly, her tone calm and steady. My heart leaped violently. I almost jumped out of my seat. "And no, Director Shun, I've already forgotten." I denied it frantically, my voice cracking. She chuckled softly, the sound unnervingly clear in the small space. "Good that you've forgotten." But her eyes clearly told me, "You haven't forgotten." After that night, she seemed to become even more intense. She was no longer satisfied with exerting psychological control over me just at the company. She began invading my personal life. She would happen to show up at the coffee shop I frequented, then bump into me. She would casually find out my weekend plans, then happen to be nearby. She even started ordering takeout for me. The reason being, "You look too thin, you need more nutrition." I refused, and she used work to pressure me. "What? You can't even accept this little bit of concern? Or do you have a problem with me?" What problem could I possibly have? I could only accept it silently. I felt like I was being caught in an invisible net, tightening around me with nowhere to escape. Her presence was pervasive. Her control was omnipresent. I started to wonder, had she planted surveillance devices on me? Or did she have some kind of mind-reading ability? Why did it seem like she saw through my every thought, every intention to escape? Until one day, due to consecutive all-nighters working overtime, combined with excessive mental stress, I fell ill. Running a high fever, completely weak, I lay in my small rented apartment, without even the strength to get out of bed for a glass of water. In a daze, I sent Shinjibai a message asking for leave. I expected her usual cold reply of "got it." Unexpectedly, half an hour later, my doorbell rang. I struggled to get up, looked through the peephole. It was Shun Jibai. She was wearing casual clothes and even carrying a pharmacy bag. I was scared out of my wits. I frantically looked for a place to hide. But she, as if she had a key, directly opened my apartment door. "Immerse. Shun, why are you here?" "And you opened my door." I stared at her in horror. "You forgot." She dangled the key in her hand. It was the spare key issued by the company previously, but I had never given it to her. "That day you left early with a fever. You fainted in the break room. I was the one who took you to the hospital, and I was also the one who carried you downstairs." She walked towards me step by step, her gaze fixed on my face, carrying a hint of a complex emotion I had never seen before. "Linyi," she leaned down slightly, raised her hand to feel my forehead, her palm cool. "Back then, you kept holding onto my hand tightly. And you touched my waist. Won't you admit it?" Boom. My mind went blank. That day, I was delirious with fever. I only remembered someone taking care of me, very gently. Could it really have been her? And I touched her waist. I'm done for. I'm completely done for. Looking into her bottomless eyes, feeling the coolness of her palm, and the heart-stopping information in her words. I felt all my defenses completely crumble in that moment. Tears welled up without warning. Not out of grievance, not out of fear, but from a kind of completely out of control, chaotic emotion that even I couldn't quite explain. Ms. Shun, what? What exactly do you want? Seeing me cry, Shun Jibai seemed taken aback for a moment. In those perpetually cold, sharp eyes, an extremely faint trace of panic, or perhaps helplessness, flashed by. But the slight anomaly vanished quickly. She withdrew her hand, straightened up, resuming her usual impassive demeanor. Only her tone seemed a little softer than usual. "It's nothing," she said lightly. "Seeing you were quite ill, I came to check on you." She placed a pharmacy bag on the bedside table. "The doctor said you need rest. I've already requested 3 days of leave for you from HR." I looked at her, not knowing what to say. This sudden concern from her made me even more unsettled. "Lie down." She gestured towards a bed. I subconsciously obeyed and lay back down, like a primary school student being reprimanded by a teacher. She found a thermometer and expertly took my temperature. Then she poured a glass of warm water, took out the pills, and watched me take them. Throughout the process, she remained silent, yet her actions were very natural, even a little gentle. I must be delirious from the fever to actually think the Ice Queen is gentle. After I took the medicine, she soaked the towel she brought in cold water and placed on my forehead. The cool touch cleared my head a little. "Director Shun, thank you," I whispered. "No need." She still had that cold expression. "You're my subordinate. It's only right that I show concern." After a pause, she added, "Besides, if you're sick, who's going to follow up on the project's progress?" All right, I knew it. She really is still that workaholic, Shun Jibai. Caring about subordinates is just incidental. Silence fell in the room again. She sat on the chair by the bed, showing no intention of leaving, just watching me quietly. Her gaze no longer held the scrutiny and pressure it used to, but was focused, even carrying a hint of inquiry. Being watched by her like this, I felt uncomfortable all over, as if I'd been stripped bare. "Director Shun, you don't need to worry about me. I'll be fine after some sleep." "Really?" She raised an eyebrow. "You seem quite feverish. What if it spikes again in the middle of the night?" I was speechless. "You live alone?" Parents. Back in my hometown. Girlfriend? Don't have one." I answered honestly. How could a corporate drone like me, just past probation, have time for romance? After listening, she nodded and said no more. After a while, she stood up. I thought she was leaving and had just breathed a sigh of relief. But then I saw her walk over to my small fridge, open it, look inside, and then frown. "This is what you usually eat." Inside the fridge were only a few beers, a few boxes of instant noodles, and some nearly expired frozen dumplings. Yeah, I felt a bit embarrassed. She didn't say anything, just turned and walked out of my apartment. I was wondering where she was going when she returned about 10 minutes later. She was carrying 2 large bags of groceries, fresh vegetables, meat, eggs, and even a small bag of rice. Then she actually walked into my tiny kitchen, tied on my apron, which had yellowed slightly from disuse, and started cooking. I watched, dumbfounded, as she bustled around the cramped kitchen, chopping vegetables, washing rice, lighting the stove. Her movements were deft and methodical, completely unlike the powerful, untouchable, strong woman who commanded respect at the company. What on earth was happening? Shun Jibai actually knew how to cook, and she came to my place to cook for me. I felt like my worldview had been overturned once again. Soon, a tempting aroma wafted from the kitchen. She walked to my bedside, carrying a bowl of steaming hot congee with vegetables and lean meat. "Get up, eat some while it's hot." She said it in a commanding tone, yet she reached out to help me sit up, even placing a pillow behind my back. I looked at the simple yet fragrant congee in the bowl, then at Shun Jibai before me, wearing an apron, her face possibly speckled with tiny drops of oil. Oh, or was that my imagination? It felt like a dream. "Director Shun, this." "Stop with the nonsense." She thrust the spoon into my hand. "Hurry up and eat." I had no choice but to pick up the spoon and sip the congee slowly. It was cooked very soft and tasted wonderful. The warmth slid down my throat, soothing my empty stomach and also, strangely, calming my anxious heart. She just sat beside me, watching me eat. When I had finished half the bowl, she handed me a glass of warm water. "Get some more sleep," she said. "I'll stay here and watch over you." I looked at her, opened my mouth, but in the end, asked nothing. Perhaps illness makes one vulnerable. Perhaps her gentleness was too deceptive. I actually nodded inexplicably. Then, I lay back down and closed my eyes. I knew this wasn't normal. I knew she must have some motive. I knew I shouldn't let my guard down around her. But, under the gaze of her deep eyes, in a room filled with the aroma of food, amidst the fatigue and dizziness brought by illness, I felt like a small boat that had drifted in a storm for a long time, finally finding a harbor where I could temporarily dock, even if this harbor might conceal more dangerous whirlpools. I kind of didn't want to leave anymore. Those 3 days of sick leave, I spent them in a daze, and yet, incredibly clearly. What was clear was Shun Jibai's care. She didn't leave. She really stayed watch in my rented room of less than 10 square meters. 3 meals a day, she cooked them herself, light, nutritious, and surprisingly suited to my taste. She supervised me taking medicine on time, took my temperature, and used physical methods to help bring my fever down. Even when I was feverish, delirious, and talking nonsense, she would gently pat my back and hum some tuneless melodies. Those 3 days, she was no longer that high and mighty female devil, more like a gentle, older sister, or I didn't dare to think further. What was muddled was my heart. I couldn't understand at all what Shun Jibai was trying to do. One moment she was cold as ice, capable of freezing someone with a look. The next, she was meticulous, caring for me as if I were a helpless baby. She clearly held my life and death power, capable of easily ruining my future. Yet when I was at my most wretched and vulnerable, she gave me almost doting care. What was she really after? Was it just because it was interesting? Or did she really towards me? The moment this thought arose, I immediately extinguished it. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. But my body's reactions were increasingly beyond my control. When she got close, my heartbeat would uncontrollably speed up. When her fingertips accidentally brushed against my skin, I would tremble as if shocked by electricity. When she looked at me intently, I couldn't help but blush, want to look away, yet unable to resist sneaking glances at her. I must have been muddled by the illness. Or had she cast some kind of spell on me? The sick leave ended, and I returned to the company. Everything seemed to return to normal. Shun Jibai was still the cold and strict director Shun, holding meetings, reviewing drafts, assigning tasks, meticulous and merciless. It was as if those 3 days of living together were just my own hallucination. But some things, after all, were different. I realized that I seemed not as afraid of her as before. Even upon seeing her icy face, I would uncontrollably recall the image of her wearing an apron, busy in the kitchen. Upon hearing her stern voice, I would remember the tuneless melodies she hummed by my ear. This feeling panicked me. I was afraid I would get stuck too deep, afraid this was just another one of her clever games. I tried to pull away again, to return to that previous state of cautiousness and keeping a respectful distance. But it was difficult. She seemed to have noticed my deliberate distancing. She didn't say anything, just. Her control over me intensified. She would find all sorts of reasons to call me into her office. She would make me accompany her for overtime after work, and then incidentally have dinner together. She even began to interfere in my personal life. "What are your plans for the weekend? Who did you go out to dinner with tonight? That new female colleague, you seem close to her?" Her questions became increasingly boundary blurring, carrying an undeniable possessiveness. I felt like I was suffocating. Finally, one night, after she had once again kept me late in the office under the guise of discussing the proposal, and, as I was reporting on my work, her fingers accidentally brushed against the back of my hand. I finally broke. "Director Shun." I jerked back a step, my voice trembling with agitation. "What exactly are you trying to do?" She lifted her eyes to look at me, showing no surprise in her gaze, as if she had expected my outburst all along. "What am I trying to do?" She put down her pen, leaned back slightly against the chair, her posture languid yet radiating an aura of complete control. "Linyi, that's not the question you should be asking me." She paused, her gaze locking onto mine, and said, enunciating each word with absolute clarity. You should ask yourself, what are you hoping for? Hoping for what? What was I hoping for? I was hoping you'd stay away from me. I was hoping you'd leave me alone. I was hoping you'd stop tormenting me with this ambiguity, this push and pull. The words churned in my throat, but I couldn't utter a single one. Because, in those eyes that seemed to see right through everything, I saw my own wretched reflection. I saw, deep within my heart, that flicker of confused, stirring, that even I didn't dare admit to myself. I opened my mouth, but my voice came out dry and hoarse. You're wavering. She answered for me, her tone certain. She stood up and walked towards me, step by step. The sharp click of her heels on the floor sounded like hammer blows against my heart. She stopped right in front of me. The distance between us was so small we could feel each other's breath. She was slightly shorter than me, having to tilt her head up slightly to look at me. But her gaze was filled with aggression and allure. Linyi, she raised her hand, her fingertips gently brushing against my cheek. The cool touch sent a shiver through me. Admit it. You're not afraid of me. You. Her voice dropped low, laced with a fatal charm. Want me? Boom. My mind went completely blank. All reason, all resistance, all my defenses. In that instant, they utterly collapsed. I don't know where the courage came from. Perhaps it was alcohol, though I hadn't been drinking. Perhaps it was emotion suppressed for too long, perhaps. I was bewitched by the look of absolute certainty in her eyes. I suddenly reached out, grabbing her waist. Under her astonished gaze, I pushed her firmly against the office desk behind her. Then, I lowered my head and kissed her. The kiss was almost frantic, desperate, like pent-up emotions finally finding release. Or perhaps it was rebellion against her constant control and revenge? I didn't know. All I knew was that the moment my lips touched her cool ones, my mind went blank again. All the fear, the anxiety, the struggle vanished in that instant. All that remained was a sense of sinking into near oblivion. Shinji Bai seemed unprepared for my sudden move. For a fleeting moment, she stiffened, perhaps, in shock, but she recovered quickly. She didn't push me away. Instead, she reached up, wrapped her arms around my neck, and deepened the kiss. Her response was inexperienced, yet carried an undeniable dominance. It was as if she were declaring, even now, the control was still hers. The kiss lasted a long time. Only when we were both breathless did we slowly pull apart. Silence filled the office. Only the sound of our ragged breaths intertwined in the air. I looked at her. She looked back at me. Her cheeks held an unnatural flush. The usual coldness and sharpness were gone from her eyes, replaced instead with a dazed look I'd never seen before and vulnerability. Those lips, usually pressed tightly together, were now slightly swollen, tinged with my breath. This Shunjibai had less of her usual lofty distance, and more of a woman's tangible allure. My heart skipped several beats. Director Shun. My throat was dry. I wanted to say something but didn't know what. Just now, what on earth did I do? I actually forced a kiss on my immediate superior, the she-devil who held my fate in her hands. It's over. It's completely over this time. She's definitely going to kill me. However, to my surprise, Shunjibai didn't get angry. She just looked at me quietly, her expression complicated. After a long moment, she finally spoke slowly, her voice a little hoarse. Linyi. Present. I subconsciously stood at attention. Seeing me like this, she suddenly allowed a soft laugh. That smile, like ice beginning to thaw, held a breathtaking beauty. She reached out a finger and gently poked my chest. Are really quite interesting. I was completely stunned. What? What was happening now? All right. She straightened her slightly disheveled clothes and hair, resuming her usual calm and composed demeanor, as if that out-of-control kiss had never happened. It's getting late. Let's call it a day. Huh? Oh. I nodded dumbly. Tomorrow morning, put the revised proposal on my desk. She added, her tone reverting to its usual businesslike manner. Yes, Director Shun. She said nothing more, picked up her bag, turned, and walked out of the office, the click-clack of her high heels fading away, leaving me alone, standing there like an idiot. Just now, what exactly happened? That kiss. What did it mean? A moment of impulse? Or something else? Shun Jibai. What was she thinking? I felt like my brain had completely turned to mush. The next day, I walked into the company with a heart heavier than if I were heading to the guillotine. I was fully prepared to be summoned to Shun Jibai's office and promptly fired. However, nothing happened. When she saw me, her expression was the same as always, calm, indifferent, as if last night's uncontrolled kiss was truly just an illusion. She didn't mention last night, nor did she act any differently towards me. It was still meetings as usual, reviewing drafts as usual, scolding people as usual. Everything seemed to have returned to square one. No, that wasn't right. There was a change. I noticed that her gaze, when she looked at me, seemed to hold something more. No longer just scrutiny and pressure. Occasionally there was a hint of amusement or inquiry, and I, when facing her, could no longer return to that previous state of pure fear and awe. In my heart, I would uncontrollably recall that kiss, recall her momentary vulnerability and stirred emotion. It was as if an invisible, ambiguous veil hung between us. Neither of us pierced it, yet it truly existed. This state lasted for nearly a month, until astonishing news came from the group headquarters. The long vacant position of group vice president was actually being filled by Shun Jibai. Furthermore, she had been granted significant decision-making power by the board of directors. Everyone was stunned. No one had expected this young, low-profile, except for being strict with subordinates, female director to possess such a profound background and capability. And what shocked me even more was yet to come. On the day she officially took office as vice president, she summoned me to her new office, spacious, bright, with an excellent view. "Linyi," she said, sitting behind a massive desk, looking at me, her gaze calm. "Starting today, you will serve as my special assistant." What? I thought I had misheard. What unwilling? No, it's not. I hastily shook my head. It's just too sudden. "There's nothing sudden about it," she said nonchalantly. "I think you have a lot of potential." She paused, then suddenly smiled, a hint of slyness in her expression. Besides, she stood up, walked up to me, leaned in slightly, and whispered in my ear, her voice held an enthralling magic. "As my special assistant, later, if you want to relax, you can always come find me." After all, her gaze fell on my lips, slightly parted in shock. "I am your exclusive technician." At that moment, looking at the familiar, all-controlling smile in her eyes, and connecting it with her mysterious background and all her previous unusual behavior, an absurd, yet seemingly the only logical thought shot through my mind. Could it be that Yu Zhu Xian was also her enterprise? Could it be that from the very beginning, that chance encounter was elaborately designed by her? Could it be she did all this not just because it was interesting, but she had her sights set on me all along? This speculation made my blood run cold, yet uncontrollably my heart pounded. Shun Jibai, this woman, just how many secrets are you still hiding? After becoming Shun Jibai's special assistant, my life turned upside down. My job description changed from drawing and revising drafts to handling more core business, interacting with higher-level contacts, and also being constantly exposed to her control. She remained the same strict, demanding, perfectionist boss. But when no one else was around, she would find various ways to tease me. For instance, during meetings under the table, she would gently hook my calf with the point of her high heel. For instance, when handing me documents, her fingertips would accidentally brush against the palm of my hand. For instance, while I was concentrating on work, she would suddenly lean close to my ear, her breath warm and fragrant. "Focus, Linyi." Each time, it made my heart race and my face flush red, yet I was helpless. I had tried to resist, tried to draw boundaries, to maintain a purely professional subordinate relationship. But it was useless. She always found a way to make me have to submit, either by pressuring me with work or by using more direct means. One time, I truly couldn't stand her push-and-pull, ambiguous attitude anymore. When she cornered me in the pantry again, attempting to pin me against the wall, I mustered my courage and grabbed her advancing wrist. "Director Shun, I looked into her eyes, striving to keep the tremble out of my voice. Please maintain your decorum. We are merely superior and subordinate. She arched an eyebrow, seeming quite interested in my resistance. Oh, merely superior and subordinate. She tightened her grip on my hand in return. Her strength wasn't overwhelming, yet I couldn't break free. Then, who was it that was holding on to me on the sofa last night, refusing to let go? My face exploded in heat. Yes, I admit it. After that out-of-control kiss that night, things between us escalated. Things got even more out of control. With her feigned resistance, even bordering on suggestive invitation, I was completely lost. I choked with anger, yet was powerless to refute her. Linyi, she leaned closer, our noses almost touching, her gaze holding a mix of possessiveness and fondness. Stop lying to yourself. Admit it. You like it when I treat you this way. You like me too. Did I like her? I'd asked myself this question countless times. The answer was yes. Yes, I liked her. I liked her beauty, her strength, the gentleness she occasionally showed, and even the feeling when she controlled me, that mix of fear and addiction. I suppose I really was beyond saving. Seeing my silence, Shun Jibai smiled with satisfaction. She released my hand and straightened my tie, her movements as natural as if we'd been a couple for years. All right, she patted my cheek. Go back to work. Tonight, come to my place for dinner. I looked at her and finally nodded. And just like that, I became Shun Jibai's actual secret lover. This role felt both absurd and thrilling. By day, at the company, we maintained a formal superior-subordinate relationship. By night, in her luxurious apartment, we were the most intimate of lovers. She would shed her daytime dominance and coldness, revealing a lazy, sensual, even slightly clingy side. She'd curl up on the sofa to watch movies, resting her head on my lap. She'd cook for me on a whim, though. It didn't taste very good. In bed, too, she'd reveal a completely different side. Passionate and possessive. I was immersed in this relationship of ice and fire, unable to pull myself away. I knew it was dangerous, like playing with fire. I knew the disparity in our statuses was vast, our future uncertain. But I couldn't control myself. I craved the unique sense of exclusivity she offered, until one day, in her study, I accidentally came across a file. It was an extremely detailed background check report on me, from my birth through my schooling to my internships. Even the scar I got from falling out a tree as a child was documented. The investigation date was a startling 6 months ago, right around the time I had just joined the company. And on the last page of the report, attached was a photo of me, circled in red marker. Beside it, 2 characters scrawled flamboyantly mine. Signed, Shunji Bai. In that instant, I felt a chill run down my spine from head to toe. So she had, right from the very beginning, all the seemingly chance encounters, the apparently coincidental arrangements, the seemingly impulsive flirtations. It was all meticulously planned by her, including that night at Yuzu Xian. She wasn't working part-time at all. That place, it was likely hers. She was just waiting for me to walk right into her trap. This woman, her scheming, her need for control, were far more terrifying than I had ever imagined. I thought I was having a forbidden affair with her, but it turned out I had always just been a part of her plan, the prey she had targeted long ago and was determined to capture. Holding the report, I stood rooted to the spot, motionless for a long time. I couldn't quite decipher the feeling in my heart. Anger? Fear? Or a strange sense of resignation that came from being utterly controlled. Perhaps it was all of them. Just then, Shun Jibai walked in. Seeing the report in my hands, she showed no surprise at all. She walked up to me, took the report, and tossed it casually onto the table. Then, she raised her hand, just like the first time at the foot massage parlor, gently pinched my chin, forcing me to meet her gaze. In her eyes, there was a hint of lazy amusement and undisguised possessiveness. What? Only just realizing now. She arched an eyebrow. Isn't it? Quite the surprise. I looked at her, speechless. Linyi, she leaned closer to me, her warm breath brushing against my cheek, her voice low and alluring. Stop thinking about escaping. From the moment you set foot in this company, no, from the first moment I laid eyes on you. Her fingertips lightly brushed over my lips. You were destined to be mine. Relax, my exclusive technician.